From the Daily Reporter, this is Ethan Duran. Welcome to Brews and Blueprints, a podcast about construction and development across Wisconsin. This is Ethan Duran of the Daily Reporter with another episode of Brews and Blueprints. In this episode, I interview Pat Kressin, President and CEO of GRAEF. GRAEF is a Milwaukee-based, full-service engineering, planning, and design firm, providing structural engineering, civil engineering, and transportation engineering, among many other services in the building industry. Some prominent projects they have been involved in include the Milwaukee Art Museum, the Harley-Davidson Museum, Komatsu's South Harbor Campus, and Discovery World. Recently, Kressin stepped in after John Kissinger officially retired this year. It's a very exciting new role. I wanted to start off, Pat, by asking, what excites you the most about leading the firm moving forward? And thanks again for being on the podcast.
Good to see you, Ethan. Thanks for the invitation. Always happy to chat. Yeah, it's been last January, 2 Januaries ago, I took over as president and transitioned into the role of CEO, which I took over in March of this year. And it was great to have that kind of runway of being president for a year plus, because I got to get kind of a plan in place of what do we want to start with. We made a whole lot of leadership changes last year. We worked on collaborating and developing a shared vision between the fourth generation of leadership here at GRAEF. And that's probably the most exciting part, is working with my fellow partners here at the firm throughout the country to develop a shared vision and then to execute it. And we're making all sorts of process improvement changes. And some of those we're actually finishing up some of these major projects now, because we started them, maybe a year or so ago. And it's been great to just, collaborate, develop a plan, and then execute it. For me, that's always the exciting part, is taking things off your list.
Do you want to dive a little bit deeper into the shared vision you're working on with the leadership? What sort of projects are you looking forward to, or what do you want to change about the work environment about in GRAEF moving forward? And, does that relate to technology or, finding new talent, sustainability, all of the above, none of the above?
It has a little bit of all of that baked into it. So we have three, I would call them, silos of initiatives. One is growth, one is quality, and the other is more internal things. So under the growth mindset, one of our first goals was to take a look at our leadership structure, of which we did. We changed it to a leadership tree, because trees grow. And so it's an inverted organizational chart. And within that, we also have those three buckets under quality, growth, and then operations. And so we finished that project last year. We had 22 people were promoted last year within the firm, which was a lot, but it was great. And now we replaced that goal under growth with expanding what we do in all markets. And what I mean by that is, of our 9 locations, not all of them have every service that we have. And so a big part of that shared vision is adding, say, transportation engineering to Minneapolis, or electrical engineering to Miami, et cetera. So that's part of one of our growth initiatives, which is great. And then we're also still working on continuing to add other locations from an M&A strategy. So that's been really exciting. But one of the coolest things we did is we added an initiative around quality. And that really meant doing good work and being one GRAEF. And with that in mind, we created a whole separate silo under quality. We created a chief technical officer, who's Mary Beth Pettit. And under her, she has several directors of various disciplines. We have a director of transportation engineering, director of structural engineering, director of civil engineering, and we're planning on adding a director of MEP engineering here very soon. So that's been really exciting. And then also us focusing on trying to find more people. We want to recruit superstars. And so we're tweaking where we go for career fairs. We're tweaking how we find employees. And we're really focused on trying to find them and then give them training to become the future leaders of the firm. one of the biggest initiatives we took on this last year was making sure every person within the firm had a career development plan. With that plan, you have a variety of SMART goals, but with it also includes external training. And a lot of it's leadership training. And we put together a great kind of leadership training package that goes to various employees at different points in their career to help them take that next step. So that we're being proactive to help them manage their career. And having a plan is a great place to start. So that's a little bit of the things we worked on that have been exciting for me because it's all about process improvement, building our people, moving the firm forward.
Sounds like there's a lot of evolution coming across the company and a lot of upward mobility, a lot of internal opportunities to move up as well. Um, you sort of described, coming up with these three silos and this change in the structure and the overall organization. But I wanted to ask, since your time with GRAEF, how has the company evolved since you first joined?
Wow. So when I first started at GRAEF in 1995, our office building was an old church and school, and I was in a classroom with 3 other or 4 other people, where we had a drawing table and you still had, Mylar and then your other side of your desk, you had a computer. I remember coming to GRAEF at that time and, like, CAD was new to the firm. They had only gotten it within the last couple of years. So people were learning CAD, even though I came out of school knowing CAD very well, but we could still hand draw if needed. And it was very much it was a family business. Everybody they did stuff on weekends. Um, there was about 115 people at that time. We probably only had 3 locations at that time. And since then, we kept those family values and have continued to add more locations, add more technical services, continued to grow the firm to where we are today. Um, but we really I really love that family atmosphere. I mean, not just being part of the softball team and the bowling team, but like on weekends, we would get together with other colleagues, and do things and building that family atmosphere and those friendships really are what has propelled the firm forward. I mean, so many of those people I looked up to when I first started, some are here today. A lot of them retired in the last couple of years. But I've been friends with these people for 30 plus years, which has really been fantastic. So, we've changed kind of pieces of where we work, how we work. We've added a lot of process improvement and systems just because now we're, in the 300-ish range. And to be effective at a business of that size, you need some more things. But we've added all those administrative tasks and such. But we maintain that family atmosphere, which to me is super important.
Now, you mentioned a few things I find pretty interesting. Just getting into CAD, for example, technology is becoming a larger role in, I'm sure not just the engineering realm, but every workflow you can imagine right now is undergoing a sort of change, especially with the onset of artificial intelligence in the last few years. And I wanted to ask, how has technology changed since you started? Do you see it playing a larger role when you're helping plan projects, whether it's civil or structural engineering, transportation? Does it make it better, make it easier for you to get through and help support these projects?
So it's interesting you asked that. I mean, I don't think you can go to a conference, anywhere and not hear about AI and what it's going to do to my industry, the world, your daily life, etc. Um, and so at GRAEF, one of the things we did, we understood that this was something that is coming and something we need to understand. So we actually added a non-engineer, digital strategist to our team to help us figure out how all of this is going to play into our business. Not just from using a co-pilot, but all of our different softwares and their ability to talk to each other, to to have systems and automate different things. that just reduce the amount of manual labor that goes into things. And this isn't meant, this isn't, these efficiencies aren't meant to take jobs away. What this is to have take manual things away so that we can have our staff work on things of higher value, as opposed to data entry or very manually intensive things. And what I heard, I was at a conference in DC last week, the National ECE Spring Conference, and there was a lot of talk on AI. But one of the things that struck me the most was the speakers kind of acknowledged this was to the engineering architecture world, like when CAD came in. People didn't know what it was going to do to the industry, but they knew you needed to understand it because they knew it was such an important part of the future that you had to. And I think that's the same place where we're at with AI and other systems like it, is that we need to understand it, because I think it's not going to replace engineers, but engineers are going to be the people who have to understand how to use this technology and how to have it help them do engineering, how you can use it to make digital twins, or how you can have it evaluate three different solutions. But at the end of the day, an engineer still needs to understand the principles of engineering. They still need to understand what is allowed by code. They still are there to protect health, safety, and welfare. So I don't think it's going to take away engineers. I think engineering is going to change because they're going to have to learn how to use all these different tools and softwares and have them talk to each other. But it's something that we're heavily invested in, and we're going to continue to invest in it because it's the future of our industry, just like CAD was 30 years ago.
Okay. And then going back to, now you mentioned this is a new technology engineers are going to have to learn coming in. And, while GRAEF has grown to, I believe you said around 300 people, you've seen a lot of folks retire in the past couple of years. Now, obviously, we're a very construction focused podcast, and we hear a lot about the labor shortage in particular. And I wanted to know, do you have similar challenges in engineering? I know that, the UW system, they're working on a new engineering college in Madison just to increase its capacity, which I'm sure that tells you the demand is extremely high right now. So I guess it's a bit of a two-parter question. Do you see challenges with hiring in engineering, getting people interested? And then, the B part of that question is, what are some strategies your firm uses to bring in new talent?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first off, we're working on the new engineering building at UW-Madison. So it's a fantastic project, and we're happy to be the structural engineer on it. And yeah, the world isn't making as many engineers as it once did. So one of the things that GRAEF has been investing in is helping to help the world make more engineers, and that's investing in STEM related organizations earlier in life. So we're one of the founding members of the Milwaukee chapter of ACE Mentorship, which helps support young men and women earlier in their life and give them opportunities in the architecture, engineering, construction industry. We're also investing in other programs that around the Discovery World and other organizations that help get kids interested in engineering. I think we found that people need to, if you want to be interested in being an engineer, it needs to happen before high school, and it likely needs to happen before middle school. So, us trying to expose more people to it with some of our mission is really important. Now, once they've decided to be an engineer or are interested in it, one thing that we've been doing this year, and we've really ramped this up this year, is offering more summer internships. And so we tried to make sure each group, each office had at least one intern, because it's a great way to get people, acclimated to the work environment, to help them understand what we do. And it's honestly, for us, it's a great way to try out a prospective employee, because we can see if they have the aptitude to actually excel in their career. So we also have, we have plenty of workers internally here that we're trying to draft and develop. And that's where that career plan comes in place. So the career plan is there to help them, get them on a path, keep them on a path to grow their career. At the same time, we're trying to find other staff that might fill other needs. And for us, it's really trying to recruit superstars. And how do we recruit superstars? We try to be a flexible work environment. We try to be family focused. We try to give people good pay, good benefits, and exciting work. Everyone that got into this because they want to work on cool stuff, myself included. So us trying to chase and win really cool stuff is really a backbone. How do we get superstars mid-career or later in your career? Um, and so it's a multi-prong approach. You just can't do one thing, but we're kind of working at all levels from elementary school to middle school and high school to postgraduate or during college to postgraduate to later in your career. And that's really a function of our needs and not really having enough of those people in the marketplace. And it's not just here in Milwaukee. This is a common problem that we see at all of our other locations.
Perfect. Now, speaking of working on cool stuff, and also, Pat, I have to offer an apology because I buried the lead about the UW-Madison Engineering College and GRAEF being a part of that project as well. And the 6 top project awards GRAEF has supported, in particular for the Daily Reporter's top projects of 2025. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
I want to give you the chance to maybe talk a little bit about some of those projects, maybe some of the challenges or highlights, the Freighter Blue structure, the Center for Black Excellence in Culture, the Children's Wisconsin's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, I mean, all great projects, and obviously a lot of hard work that was dutifully recognized.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about a couple of them. Yeah, they were all really great projects with great clients. One of the ones let me just talk with first was the Milwaukee Dog Park, which was something we helped um, the downtown bid with. And this project started in 2019, I think, or early 2019. And it was really a pro bono project for us to help the downtown bid and M7 and Milwaukee Public Market, et cetera, to kind of push this project forward as they were partnering with MDC to get this project off the ground. And so it was very interesting because it was one of those projects that started before COVID and worked during COVID, and it's just fantastic to see it finally built and open. Um, and they had so many twists and turns, not just from COVID, but some changes in design and other things. And now partnering with Foxtown Brewing. I mean, it's really become so much more that pause or slowness of that project for COVID, I think actually helped it. Because otherwise I think we might have just built it right away and we may not have had something so amazing with the Foxtown partnership and the Riverwalk and all these other things. So that was a really cool project to see come to fruition, and it'll be great to have Foxtown open soon. Also, the Center for Black Excellence was a project that we won that a long time ago with Jolie Architects, and it was great to have a project that's so mission driven. Those are projects, not every project has great missions and helps the community become a better place, but that's really going to be an asset, and excited to be part of it. And then I guess last, the Freighter Blue structure is really just fantastic. We've done a lot of work for Freighter for many, many years, and they're a great partner and they're a great institution for us to have. And any project that we can help them with to execute is fantastic. And one thing that I love the most about Freighter is that they're always pushing on new trends. What we are trying to do on that parking deck was really to reduce the carbon footprint. And they're always asking, how can we make this better? How can we be more sustainable? And it's great to have clients like that. As designers, we want to do those things. We want to, but not all clients want us to do quite as much. But Freighter is always pushing us to do more, which is really fantastic.
Something that was striking, I heard at John Kissinger's retirement party. And by the way, I appreciate the invitation to that and being present for that. I think, and I'm loosely paraphrasing, he mentioned, even working on something that might appear boring to the everyday person, like a parking structure, is actually could be a very interesting thing to work on. So, The fact that we're talking so much about this, you think it's just somewhere that you park your car, but it's actually clearly a lot more thoughtful than we might usually give it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's people that are passionate about parking and access. And our parking team, we do a lot of parking decks in the region, including the Fifth Street deck for the at Pfizer Forum, and providing, not just safety, but improved levels of service for in and out, for wayfinding, for, even reducing your carbon footprint on such a large concrete structure is why they got into this business, and they love that type of stuff. And yeah, it's great to have projects that, we're sustainable. We created a great venue, and people like them, and it's improving things every day and trying to just do the next one better than the last
You mentioned reducing a carbon footprint, and can I ask, what are some ways GRAEF is incorporating sustainability into its work? What's the relationship between concrete making and being able to reduce a carbon footprint? Just for starters.
Yeah, so we've partnered with or joined up to be what's called SC 2050, which is a structural engineer group that's dedicated to reducing the carbon footprint in concrete structures, et cetera. And there's different processes and different admixtures that you can use in the process to help reduce that. And it gets pretty technical pretty quick, but it's been great. We have a team here dedicated in our various Wisconsin offices that are focused on that, and working with UW Madison and other organizations to help test these theories on their own projects and to evaluate them and give real time data or real world data to make sure these things are being effective. So it's, a little bit every day on trying to make these projects a little bit more efficient or sustainable from that perspective. But at GRAEF, one of the other great things is we've added sustainability to all of our services. Each of our technical areas have business plans with sustainable ideas that they want to include in their projects. Some they try to use on a daily, regular basis because it's the right thing to do, and some might be a little bit more ambitious. But they are making clients aware of these opportunities, educating clients. In a lot of cases, our clients are, "Hey, yeah, let's do that." That the ROI on that is, 3 years. We think that's the right thing to do, and so for us, it's part of having that knowledge, and then educating our partners, our clients, et cetera, of these ideas. And most people really just want to do the right thing. And if there's an ROI on it that's reasonable, it's generally a yes.
Wonderful. Um, Pat, I wanted to ask you another thing that I am sort of screening with different architecture firms in Wisconsin right now. And, where do you see your company's work in Wisconsin coming from? Both currently and in the future.
Well, as a firm, we've always kind of tried to be 50% public work, 50% private work, as kind of our secret sauce for understanding, not just government, but the private side of the business as well. And, I that seems to be where it's going to continue. Yeah, I was in Washington, D.C. last week. We got a update briefing by several people, part of the transportation subcommittee. It sounds like when the next month here, there should be another bill on the floor to extend IIJA, which is the federal funding for infrastructure. Haven't seen the bill yet, but my understanding from talking to some of the aides of our elected officials is that it's very similar and more robust in certain areas. So I'm hopeful that the federal government will continue its funding in transportation and infrastructure projects. I spent 8 years as a board trustee in the village of Elm Grove, and understanding how federal funds flow down to even local municipalities is super critical to maintaining infrastructure throughout our city, our region, our state. And without those federal funds, things get tough really quickly. So I'm hopeful that that continues. On the private side, with the investment and some of the changes, not just in DC, but in Madison, there's been such a increase in industrial type of work coming to, Wisconsin, whether that's the stuff, the data center world, Microsoft, others, Eli Lilly, these are fantastic corporations to come and invest in our community. And it's a testament to our great people here and our ability to work, with not just government, but with private and, private businesses to push the state forward, which is really what this is all about. Let's just continue to, invest in each other and push ourselves forward.
Awesome. As a follow-up, how does GRAEF play its strengths into these new booming projects, whether it's a public-private partnership or, private industrial like Eli Lilly, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, on the government side, we have a lot of experience, for many many years on design of almost anything. As a firm, we do everything other than commercial architecture, right? So, having the ability to be a one stop shop for many of our clients is awfully very appealing, where we only have one point of contact and we can solve all their engineering needs. And that on the infrastructure side, that's always been true. On the private side, it's mostly true. In a lot of cases, having that expertise allow us to be more efficient on delivery of plan sets, allows us to make sure coordination is more complete because people sit next to each other, and the relationships are there. This isn't putting four teams from four different firms together that don't know each other. This is people that have always been working together delivering a project. And, we've seen that over and over. And one of the main reasons our clients come back to us is those types of things, the coordination, quality of the documents, the solid engineering. And a lot of that is because we have all these people and they've built relationships together and they understand how each other work, and they're looking out for each other too. So that's something that's always been great for us, and then also investing in our people, and our people in giving them time to build relationships with clients, to understand what our clients' challenges are and their issues. A lot of cases, we're trying to help them solve things that aren't really engineering problems, but engineering is part of the solution. So it's great to help build those relationships with clients because that's what helps move us all forward.
Hopping back to the subject of where work is coming from, real quick, have there been any increases to the straight state transportation budget or anything even by Milwaukee County that's opened more work for GRAEF this year? I know we're working with, more than $1 billion in transportation, and I know the current governor administration talks a lot about general transportation aids to local roads, not just in Milwaukee County, but across the whole state. And do you see that as like an example of a public-private partnership that's, expanding the work, creating more infrastructure, spending and projects?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know government needs to lead by investing in things that help improve communities. And our state and our local officials have done a pretty good job of that. They're taking care of the transportation system that needs it most, whether that's from a volume of car standpoint or connectivity. Those are generally the projects that are funded first. And you see that with, I live in Elm Grove and drive downtown every day. There's a lot of work on 94, but it's needs to be done. Um, and you see that with continued work on other parts of the major transportation system, but then also on local roads. There's a lot of safety projects going on around the city this year and in the upcoming years. Michigan Avenue, or downtown, is having some safety improvements done. We're also working on some safety pedestrian bicyclist improvements up on Brady Street. So there's a new focus, and I think the mayor was the one who really started pushing on this, is that safety is really important, and that's more than just the traffic. It's also the bicyclists, it's the cars or the pedestrians, etc. And so having a new lens to look at infrastructure other than just the volume of cars is great because safety is super important. That's one of the big reasons we've been a proponent of finishing the Lakefront Gateway project. Putting those bridges back in from downtown Milwaukee across Lincoln Memorial Drive to the future Lakefront Gateway Park by Discovery World, because that's really a huge safety challenge at the moment.
I agree with that. As someone who's been to Summerfest and had to cross over Lincoln Memorial Drive to go, up Michigan Avenue or anywhere like that after a concert, are we, Pat, can I ask you what is the status on those potential pedestrian bridges? Is there more work that needs to be done before we can reach that point?
Yeah, we're in, through the Greater Milwaukee Committee and other downtown stakeholders at a point where we're working with, city officials to try and move this forward, with some public funding and some, and then also some private funding. I'm hopeful that we can get started on something this year. Time will tell. But, it was interesting as the couture was finishing up, I was getting text messages from people. They're like, see, the couture's open. Where are those bridges? And, because I think a lot of people thought that was all one project. Um, Unfortunately, they're two separate projects, and the couture's up, and that's a fantastic icon for the city. And now we just need to finish it, for safety and purposes, and just for having our city be world class on the lake. It's been interesting over the last several years. We work on a lot of projects, in many cases because we have a large meeting room. We'll have teams hold large project meetings at our office, and a lot of times these are designers and contractors from all over the world. And in many cases, every meeting after they're here for a few days, somebody will ask me, well, we walked down the Wisconsin Avenue, we got to the lake, but we couldn't figure, or we could see the lake, but we couldn't figure out how to get there. We went down some stairs by the art museum and we ended up out on a road. And so it would be great for us to finish the Lakefront Gateway project so we could have a great, clear connection to our, world-class, wonderful lakefront.
We're certainly, shaking with anticipation here to hear more about that as it progresses. So thank you for shedding some light on that. Um, Want to revisit because this isn't your first time on Brews and Blueprints podcast. The last time you were here, you had shared some, I think, some advice for other hopefuls, people who are running their own civil engineering firms would want to one day, and you shared some of the lessons you had learned, early on, being a golf caddy, going through college, starting out. What are some lessons that are proving important in this moment as president and CEO of an employee-owned firm with more than 300 people now?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are the same. I mean, the relationship building is the most important thing you can have by running a business. One of the things I went and did when I knew I was going to ultimately be the CEO is I went and had an in-person meeting with all 300 people who worked for us for at least 30 minutes. So it took me about 9 months traveling around the country to do that. But out of that, I got all sorts of really good feedback and really started the basis for having relationships. Not that I probably knew 200 ish of those people, but the other 100 I didn't. And I've continued that today with every new employee I meet, sit down with, get to know them, their family, why they pick GRAEF, tell them about myself, let them know we have an open door policy on ideas here. Um, so that relationship building is something that at any point in your career is super important, and that requires listening. That requires asking thoughtful questions about understanding people, and everyone's different. But we're all trying to do better, right? We all come to work because we want to provide for our families. We want to have some fun. We want to be challenged. So, to me, that relationship building was very important at that time. It's been important my whole life, and I've continued that over this last year and a half. Um, the other thing I didn't probably appreciate as much before taking over this role, because I think one thing I've learned is what got you to the role isn't what you need to keep the role. And so in this role now, I have to do a lot more open-ended questioning, allow people to just talk and listen. I think previously my job was to solve things. But as a CEO, I think your job is to listen to people, which is a little bit different before, you're just, sometimes they might not have a solution. So that's something that I probably didn't understand quite as much, but I learned over the last year and a half.
That's good advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Pat, I'm out of questions here. Was there anything you wanted to share or anything we didn't get a chance to cover while we are in this recording session?
Well, I just want to thank you, Ethan. One, for coming to the party. I was glad you were able to make it, and for inviting me on this session here. It's great to see you again. I appreciate the Daily Reporter and all the great work that you do in highlighting our industry, and the awards. It's always great to be part of that night. So no, I just wanted to thank you for all that you guys do for the community and highlighting our industry. Without groups like the Daily Reporter, people might not know as much about the AEC industry, and you guys do a great job.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. And we like being part of the AEC ecosystem in our own special way. And thank you for the invitation to the retirement party. With that, that was Pat Kressin, President and CEO of GRAEF, and our first second time guest on Brews and Blueprints. Congratulations, Pat. And
I
thanks
didn't know
again.
that. Thanks. That's great.
Yes. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.